Hello students, welcome to my channel. We're gonna learn how IELTS bar graphs are answered. So in this series of videos, I'm gonna make videos on each type of writing task one in academic. The ones that are most common types are your bar graph and pie charts. The bar graph and the line graph. Pie charts are not that common. I mean, if I talk about the exam point of view, anything can come, but yeah, bar graphs and line graphs are more common. So whenever you're practicing, also try to have more comfort with your bar graphs and the line graphs, because there's a lot of data and you need to know how to organize that data. If you compare that with your maps and process, they're pretty organized already, and then it's easy to write as well compared to your line graphs and bar graphs. Pie charts are also pretty little simpler, relatively simpler compared to your bar graph and your line graphs. So in a previous video we have learned a few aspects of your task one line graph we have covered. So right now we're gonna cover how your bar graphs are answered. In your bar graph, the basic information, if I talk about, it's just it is in the form of rectangle. There are bars which are being showing upward trends and then downward trends sometimes, and then you simply need to compare and summarize whatever data you can see. Again, the word limit is 150 words max. You can go up to 160, 170. Do not write a lot of words, because that's not going to give you any extra scores. Rather, it's going to reduce your scores, because you might make more grammar errors, spelling errors, etc. You are aware of your x-axis and y-axis already. I'm assuming that. If you don't know, just look at the PDF that we have provided with this. You can clearly see what are x-axis, what are y-axis in here. And then considering the bars could be grouped also. It could be the single bars also, right? And then it may show a change over time, or it could be just a comparison over the time. So what you need to overall what you need to see in this graph is the structure would remain the same for all the tasks. That is, when you're trying to write the full answer, the structure would remain the same. Now, what is the structure that I'm talking about? The structure is going to be your introduction, which means paraphrasing the question statement. Afterwards, you're supposed to write an overview. An overview, I'm assuming that an overview contains the overall information, like whenever you look at the graph for the first time, for the second time, what can you extract? The basic information, the quick look information. What can you see when you look at the graph? Something is increasing, something is decreasing, just that information, no details at all. That's what you're gonna add in your overall. And then your body paragraphs would contain the details of what you have written in your overview. Just explain each and every piece of information. Should I just I'm gonna tell you a little bit in sort of detail whatever you write in your overview. If your first sentence is about France, your main body paragraph one, definitely the first sentence of that would contain a sentence about France. And then let's say your overview's second sentence is about Canada, your main body para one second sentence would be regarding Canada. So if you write like this, it would be like pretty organized. Though it's difficult, that's the best way to write the answer. I hope you've gotten my point. But yeah, if you read if you still haven't gotten, it's not that easy to understand. I can understand that, but you can read my answers and you'll get to know that I've followed this structure to make the answers organized. We're gonna use different set of sentences. Gonna be your complex sentences, compound sentences, different grammar ranges we're gonna use, and we're gonna make comparisons wherever relevant. We need to summarize whatever it's written. There is no need to write each and everything. It's really not required. Never forget a good range vocabulary, not a very high range, but yeah, a good range of vocabulary in order to get a band 7. Yes, for band 8 and band 9 your vocabulary should be really good. Task 1, what are the 4 points that we work upon? It's your vocabulary should be good, your grammar structure good enough, and then your coherence, cohesion matters the most. This means your answer should be well organized, well structured, and then your spellings matter a lot as well. So make sure that you do not make any spelling mistakes when you're writing your answers. Never include your personal opinions. And then in order to make your answer more organized, the similar trends can be structured in one sentence, and then the different ones could be in one sentence again. We'll learn how to do that. The last step would be like, make sure that you're accurate with your data. Do not write anything which is not accurate. Like, do not, write any information which is like a false one. I mean, make sure that when you're writing it, it's always the correct information that you're writing. Alrighty, so now we're going to start with our bar graph. I'm trying to help you out in understanding how to answer this bar graph. So I've taken this one from one of the Cambridge official books. It is about the chart which shows you information about how families in one country, they haven't named the country, but then in one country they spend their weekly income in 1968 and 2018. So it's basically, if you see this closely, it's 1968 and 2018. It has a gap of around 50 years. That's 68 to 78, 78 to 88, 88 to 98, 98 to 2008, and then 2008 to 2018. And these 50 years, how families have changed, how families changed their spendings is basically the topic of the discussion. Whenever you're watching my videos, listen to me. You already have the content. There's no need to write something or copy paste anything because you have the content. Just make notes if you want. Vocab notes would be really, really helpful. Alrighty, and then let's start with our answer. The paraphrasing as usual. So the question says the family chart below gives information about how families in one country spend their weekly income. You need to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons wherever relevant. At least 150 words, max can go up to 160, 170. My response is approximately of 169 words, and I was able to complete that within 17 minutes. Right, let's start without any further ado. I'm not going to waste your lot of time. So the first statement is always going to be the paraphrase statement. So in the question, it is written, it's the chart below gives information about families. I've written the bar graph illustrates how families allocated their weekly income across various categories in 1968 and how these spending patterns changed by 2018. That's how I have paraphrased the question statement. Now, what is a paraphrasing? Paraphrasing means I've written the same thing in different words. That's it. But the meaning of the sentences never change. That's how we write it. Afterwards, in my overview, I've written overall, there was a noticeable decline in spending on food, fuel and power, clothing and footwear and personal goods, while expenditure on housing, leisure, transport increased significantly over the 50 years. Now, what I've done here is, no wonder I'm speaking a little faster, but I'll just try to break this into pieces so that you can understand it. So there's a noticeable decline. So where I can see a noticeable decline on food, clothing and footwear and personal goods, yes. In fuel and power, it's not much, so I'm gonna delete that one here. So it's food, clothing and footwear and personal goods where you can see a significant decline, whereas the expenditure on housing and leisure and transport, it has increased significantly over the years. There is apart from this, I can also see that on household goods there's no change, and fuel and power remains pretty the least. So I've not added this information in my overall because it's not required. I have instead added information in my main body para 1 and main body para 2 when I'm covering the details. But in overall, I've not added these details. Again, when you're writing overall, make sure that you know what you are writing, and when you are writing, do not make mistakes in noticing the trends. Look at them nice and slow and then extract the information only which is important. Otherwise, you might end up making mistakes. All right, so our overall is a noticeable decline in food, clothing and footwear and personal goods, whereas if we talk about our expenditure on housing, leisure and transport, it has increased significantly over the years. To begin with, the most striking change was in food expenditure. If you see in 1968, families spent around 35% their weekly income on food, but this figure dropped sharply to nearly half by 2018. In contrast, spending on housing, it doubled, rising from 10 to 20% over the same period. This is how I've written my first main body para 1 details. To begin with, the most striking change. Where's my most striking change? It's on my food expenditure. Now, if you look at the black line and the gray line, in 1968, the families, they were spending like nearly 35% of their weekly income on food. But imagine in 2018, their expenditure on food, it was like nearly 17%, which is like half of what they used to spend in 1968. In contrast, They're spending on housing, which is basically doubled. If you see the housing one, it was like literally like 10% in your 1916, but in 2018, like after 50 years, it's 20%. Similarly, now again, this is a similar thing. The proportion of income they spend on leisure and transport, if you see again on leisure and transport, they were like both under 10% in 1960. So, you know, rather than writing that it was 7% or it was 9%, I've written both are under 10% in 1960. That's how you write a clear and concise response. This is what you need to do when you're trying to organize your response. And then rose to approximately 23 and 15% respectively in 2018, of course, right? Right, let's continue with our final paragraph, which is our last paragraph. So furthermore, expenses on clothing and footwear as well as the personal goods, if you see, they're declined by almost half. Like, okay, let me explain you why I've written this and declined by half in 1968. So clothing and footwear, if I talk about in 1968, the expenses were nearly 15%, sorry, 10%, but then in 2018 there were like 5% if you look at the graph. Now finally, if we talk about the personal goods also, the personal goods were like nearly 9%, but then if I talk about in 2018, it's like 4.5%. So it's exactly the half. So that's why I've written that approximately it reduced to half. Again, you can see that I am writing almost everything, but I'm writing in a very smart way, in a way that the response doesn't extend the word range as well. It's not like you're writing each and everything, right? But you're still writing each and everything, but in a very concise way, and that's what it is required at the time of pressure when you're writing the task 1 in your real exam as well. Okay, let's go to our finally the last sentence. So finally, the percentage of income allocated to household goods remain unchanged. Something which was remain unchanged is a trend that you need to, you know, look at it. So it remains unchanged in both years, while spending on fuel and power was the lowest in both years. So that is enough information that you can tell. There's no need to tell that it was 5% in this year. It was the lowest. You can simply give it that yes, this information, like the spending on fuel and power, would remain the lowest in both years, and then percentage of income allocated to household incomes remain unchanged at nearly 8%. Yeah, at approximately 8%. That's it. At approximately 8%. So now our graph's answer is complete, and so yeah, that's what you're gonna be writing in your real exam. Now finally, some of the tips that I'm gonna include in this video are about how it is gonna be marked. It is gonna be marked with your coherence and cohesion, of course. The more your response is coherent, the higher would be your score. When it comes to your coherent and cohesion, it means how much your response is organized. If your response is pretty organized, you are likely to get a high score. And then if we talk about your vocabulary, your vocab range, I'm not saying that you have to use very high-end words, but it should be least repetitive words that you should use. If you're using whereas twice, that's completely fine. If you're using while twice, that's fine. But if you already know the synonyms of while and whereas, you can use different words, of course. But it's not gonna be like, you know, you should not be like, okay, if there is a word leisure and I'm using leisure twice, it's gonna reduce my scores. No, it doesn't work like that. So you have to be a little relaxed and don't be too harsh on yourself for this. If you want guidance on this, of course, you can reach out to us for classes. We're gonna help you step by step on how to elevate your scores to band 7. For any, you know, these confusions are pretty common among students, that if I'm writing the word leisure twice, it's gonna reduce my score. No, it doesn't gonna reduce your score. Don't worry. You can trust on us for this information. So the final tips were organized task that we have already covered, vocab range is covered, grammar. If you see my sentences, they are of different range. Sometimes I'm using complex ones, complex and compound sentences. I'm using connectors in order to connect those sentences. And yeah, most of them are complex and compound sentences. If you don't know how to write it, you can watch another videos of mine of how to, you know, make complex and compound sentences correctly without making any mistakes. And finally, your spellings. Do not make a lot of grammatical or spelling mistakes. This is why your response should be coherent and concise, so that you don't make a lot of grammar or spelling mistakes, because the more you write, the more mistakes you're gonna make. Now, Final strategy: time management is crucial. If you're not able to manage your time when you're writing your writing task 1, it's gonna be chaotic during the exam. So make sure you always plan your essay, your task 1. Plan it for at least 3 to 4 minutes. If you want to spend even 1 more minute, I can seriously suggest you to even plan for 5 minutes. That's all right, because if you're doing this planning thing for 5 minutes, you're almost writing your answers. You can actually complete writing rest of the answer in like 10 minutes, and then you still have like 5 minutes to proofread your answer. However, make sure that your typing speed is good enough. When I'm saying this, my typing speed is pretty good. That's why I'm able to type like 170 words in 10 minutes. So make sure if you're doing the computer-based exam, you check your typing speed as well. And if your typing speed is not very good, then you need to complete your planning thing in like just 3 minutes or 4 minutes max, and then you need to spend around 11 minutes 12 minutes on your typing your whole response. And then proofreading is super important as usual. Planning, proofreading, if you're not doing proofreading, you are actually reducing your 0.5 or 1 band, because you haven't checked your mistakes, and you should check your mistakes before you finally submit your answers. So always proofread your answer. Check if you have made any spelling mistake, any grammar mistake. If you feel that this sentence doesn't look, so maybe you've written a correct sentence, but then you forgot to add which or that into it. So this is a connector that is supposed to be there, and you haven't added that. When you were writing, you forgot about it. But if you just check it out and correct it, you can still elevate your scores by 0.5 or 1 band score. Otherwise, imagine that whole sentence is wrong and then you won't get any score. So these aspects you have to be careful about when you're writing your answers. And I hope you have enjoyed watching the video. You can always rewatch it in order to understand the content in a proper way. We always send you the PDFs attached, and for more information, to have the feedback of your writing tasks, you can always reach back out to us for classes. Have a nice day ahead.